Lando Norris, George Russell and Alexander Albon are just the latest Formula 2 graduates to make the step up to Formula 1. Over 30 other F1 drivers have competed in F2 or its precursor GP2, including 2 F1 World Champions, 24 Hours of Le Mans winners and even a Global Rallycross champion. We asked the fans who their top GP2 Formula 2 graduates are, and here are 10 of the best. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and tap that notification bell to stay up to date with all our content. Straight in at number 10 is reigning Formula 2 champion George Russell. I want to start off by saying I've no doubt Russell could move up the order in the coming years. With only 2 F1 races under his belt and both of those with Williams, there's almost certainly more to come from this young Brit. Russell dominated the 2017 GP3 championship before making a step up to F2 last year. In a fiercely competitive field, when many expected fellow Brit Lando Norris to shine, Russell showed just why he was a Mercedes junior driver, taking the title by 68 points. His F1 career to date hasn't been easy. Just getting into F1 was a challenge, with Mercedes having more junior drivers than seats available, and the already proven Esteban Ocon also on the market. But Russell managed to convince Williams he was the best man for the job this year, and so far he's made the most of what he's been given. He's outqualified and beaten teammate Robert Kubica in both races so far this season, finishing 15th in Bahrain. At number 9 we have current Haas driver Romain Grosjean. Romain Grosjean raced in GP2 for various teams between 2008 and 2011, taking the title in his final year in the championship. He also competed in the inaugural GP2 Asia Series in 2008 and again in 2011, winning both titles. Grosjean made his F1 debut in 2009 in less than ideal circumstances, drafted in to replace Nelson Piquet Jr. when the Brazilian left Renault. It was a difficult first year for Grosjean, with numerous crashes limiting his results, and he returned to GP2 the following season. But the Frenchman would be back. With a little more experience and the GP2 title under his belt, Grosjean returned with Lotus in 2012. Grosjean's F1 career to date has been mixed. From his first full season, the Frenchman showed potential. He finished 3rd in Bahrain, the 4th race of the season, took the fastest lap and finished 4th in Spain the following weekend, and took a career best finish of 2nd in Canada that year, behind only Lewis Hamilton. Since then, he's taken many more podium finishes and strong results, but has become known for his multiple crashes, and is currently only a handful of points away from a race ban. It's those incidents that have dropped him down many people's best drivers list. Though he's shown he's capable of strong results, they have not come often enough to put him in the top 10 in the championship standings since 2013. At number 8 is 2015 GP2 champion Stoffel Vandoorne. In his maiden season in GP2, Stoffel Vandoorne finished 2nd behind future Renault driver Jolyon Palmer. He won the opening race, but a string of pointless finishes dropped him down the championship standings, and it was only a late comeback that put him just ahead of Felipe Nasr in the final order. But Vandoorne dominated the following season. With 7 wins across the year, the Belgian finished 160 points ahead of his closest rival. It was a performance that probably deserved a promotion to F1, but as a McLaren young driver, his options were limited to the working team, who had signed Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button for the upcoming season. Vandoorne did get an opportunity to race an F1 car that year though, replacing the injured Alonso in Bahrain. He outqualified veteran racer Button and finished 10th in the race, becoming the first reserve driver to score points on their debut since Sebastian Vettel in 2007. He was given a full-time seat the following year. Stoffel Vandoorne is another driver who didn't have an easy stint in F1. In his 2 full years in F1, he was partnered with arguably one of the best drivers in the modern era and given an underperforming car. At a time when so many talented juniors are trying to make the step up to F1, Vandoorne didn't have much time to prove himself and, despite showing promise, wasn't able to really show what he could do. With Lando Norris knocking on F1's door, Vandoorne left the championship at the end of last season, but remains involved as a Mercedes test driver. Since leaving F1, Vandoorne has impressed in Formula E. Bad luck seems to have plagued his season so far, but the HWA Race Lab driver has shown potential, taking pole in Hong Kong earlier this year. At number 7 is Vandoorne's replacement, Lando Norris. Lando Norris has been one to watch all the way through his junior career, taking title after title until he arrived in Formula 2 after becoming the first non-Prema driver to win the European Formula 3 Championship. Last season, Norris faced his toughest challenge and, despite winning the opening round of the championship, would end up fighting Alexander Albon for second rather than George Russell for the win. As it was, it wouldn't matter, as Norris was already confirmed as Van Dorn's replacement at the McLaren F1 team, having been part of their junior programme since 2017. Norris is another driver that will no doubt climb up this list as his F1 career progresses, with only 2 races currently under his belt. Even so, he managed to impress, out-qualifying teammate Carlos Sainz Jr. in the opening race of the season and picking up his first F1 points in Bahrain. In at number 6 is Sergio Perez. Perez made his F1 debut for Sauber back in 2011 after finishing second in the 2010 GP2 Championship. 2010 was another competitive season in the GP2 Championship, with a number of drivers racing that year included on this list. Perez took 5 victories to finish second behind Pastor Maldonado. It was a performance that attracted a lot of attention, earning a place on Ferrari's young driver scheme, and his F1 debut the following year would continue to impress. Perez took 7th in Australia on his F1 debut and was the only driver to run a one-stop strategy for the opening race of the season. The result wouldn't stand as both Saubers were later disqualified due to a technical infringement, but the statement had been made. In his 7 years since his debut, Perez has enjoyed a number of impressive performances and always crops up as one of the drivers on the shortlist for drives at top teams, though he's never managed to move out of the midfield. Possibly his most impressive feat has been his performances at Force India, helping to lift a small independent team to best of the rest a few years ago. At number 5 is 24-hour of Le Mans winner Nico Hülkenberg. Nico Hülkenberg made the step up to F1 after winning his 2009 GP2 Championship with exactly 100 points. His first win came in front of his home crowd at the Nürburgring, where he took pole, won both the feature and sprint race, and took the fastest lap in both races, making him the second driver to complete the GP2 clean sweep. After taking the title, Hülkenberg would join Rubens Barrichello at Williams. Despite taking the team's first pole in over 5 years and 7 points finishes, Hülkenberg wasn't retained for 2011, though he would return in 2012 with Force India. Like Perez, Hülkenberg's work at Force India, helping the team to become best of the rest, has to be one of his greatest achievements in F1. It was that ability to help build a team that made him attractive to Renault. Since joining the works team in 2017, Hülkenberg has consistently been best of the rest, finishing 7th in the championship standings last year. Hülkenberg also made history in sports cars, becoming the first active F1 driver to win the Le Mans 24 Hours since 1991. Alongside Nick Tandy and Eric Balmer at Porsche, he won the most prestigious race in sports cars in 2015, Porsche's first overall triumph since the 80s. At number 4 is Jules Bianchi. Even before he stepped foot in a GP2 car, Jules Bianchi was being tied to an F1 seat. The Frenchman was Ferrari's first junior driver and was rumoured to be on the short list of drivers standing for Felipe Massa after his accident in 2009. Bianchi wasn't chosen, and he made the step up from the Euro F3 to GP2 in 2010, finishing 3rd, less than 20 points behind Sergio Perez. He stayed in the championship again in 2011 while Ferrari's test and reserve driver, again finishing 3rd in the championship standings. Bianchi made his F1 debut in 2013 with Marussia. Much like Russell at Williams this season, it's fair to say the Frenchman had the ability to finish high up the order, but the team struggled with financial problems. Despite the issues, Bianchi managed some impressive performances, finishing 13th in Malaysia in 2013 and taking a crucial points finish in Monaco in 2014. The strong performances and Alonso's imminent departure from Ferrari made Bianchi a strong contender for the 2015 Ferrari seat, only for a crash in the Japanese Grand Prix to claim his life. Even after his death, Bianchi's talent was still felt on the grid, as the points finish in Monaco and the prize money that came with it kept Marussia on the grid for another year. At number 3 is 2016 F1 champion Nico Rosberg. Nico Rosberg is one of only 2 F1 world champions to have competed in GP2. Rosberg entered the championship in its inaugural season, with the championship taking over from the Formula 3000 in 2005. After a slow start, Rosberg started to make his way to the front of the field, picking up his first podium in Monaco and his first win 2 weekends later in France. It was a tight battle between the German and Heikki Kovalainen, another driver who narrowly missed out on making this list, but Rosberg ultimately came out on top after a double win in Bahrain at the end of the year. He made the step up to F1 with Williams the following year. He spent a number of seasons with the British team, picking up 3rd and 2nd place finishes in 2008, before switching to Mercedes as the manufacturer returned to the series. Alongside Michael Schumacher, Rosberg played an important part in the building of the team and preparing for an era of domination in which the team would take 5 manufacturers and drivers' titles in 5 years. He will most likely be remembered for his fierce battle with former karting teammate Lewis Hamilton. Rosberg chased his teammate to the title in 2014 and 2015 before finally emerging on top in 2016. At number 2 we have current Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc has been counted as Ferrari's next big thing since joining the team's driver academy in 2016, and so far he's lived up to that. The Monegasque racer joined Formula 2 in 2017 as the reigning GP3 champion. Alongside his commitments as a test driver for Ferrari in Sauber, Leclerc dominated the Formula 2 title, taking 7 wins to finish more than 70 points ahead of his nearest rival. Leclerc earned a promotion to Formula 1 in 2018, leapfrogging fellow Ferrari-affiliated driver Antonio Giovinazzi to take the Sauber seat alongside Marcus Ericsson. He continued to impress in F1, regularly outscoring his more experienced teammate and taking almost as many points as Sauber had over the past 4 seasons. Leclerc's promotion to Ferrari is really a testament of his talent. The last driver to join Ferrari with less F1 experience was Charles Villeneuve in 1977. So far, only 2 GP2 F2 graduates have become F1 champion, but it's only a matter of time before Leclerc makes that 3. And finally, at number 1 we have 2012 Spanish GP race winner Pastor Maldonado. No, it's Lewis Hamilton, of course. Lewis Hamilton was the almost unanimous answer from the fans we asked, and it's easy to see why. The 5-time F1 world champion has pretty much defined this area of the championship, taking record after record as he becomes one of the most successful drivers of all time. Hamilton joined GP2 the year after former karting teammate Nico Rosberg took the title. Despite taking 14 podiums over the course of the season, including 5 wins in 7 races, Hamilton was kept under pressure by Nelson Piquet Jr. throughout the season, finishing just 12 points ahead of the Brazilian driver. The following year, Hamilton was promoted to Formula 1, competing alongside Fernando Alonso at McLaren. In his very first season, Hamilton showed signs he was going to be one of the top drivers of the era, going head-to-head with his 2-time champion teammate, often coming out on top and challenging for the title. The year after that, he would beat Ferrari's Felipe Massa by a single point. The rest is history. What do you make of our list? It was really hard to determine who fell where, and there were some incredible drivers who didn't quite make the cut. Who would you include? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to watch more Motorsport Top 10s, check out the playlist linked above.